It's time to hop in the DeLorean and go back to the future. I'm Joseph Piper. This is Coming Attractions. I'm Joseph Piper. Welcome to Coming Attractions. And welcome, Bruce Crawford is back, and we're going to talk about his screening of Back to the Future. So let me point out a few important points here first. This will be Bruce's 26th year of doing these events. And he's going to bring us the 1985 classic Back to the Future on Friday, November 9th at Joslyn Art Museum in Omaha, Nebraska. Benefits from this go to the Nebraska Kidney Association. And if you want more information, you can call 402-932-7200 or visit www.omahafilmevent.com. This is a 1985 film. Creator and producer Bob Gale and actor Harry Waters Jr. will be guests that evening, and both will speak prior to the screening and share anecdotes and discuss the making of the film. And there'll also be an autograph session, and that'll be during and after?
Yep.
Yes, okay. Tickets go on sale at Hy-Vee customer service counters on October 4th, and they are $24 each. Joslyn Art Museum is at 2200 Dodge Street in Omaha, and event starts at 7 p.m. on that Friday, the November 9th. Bruce, thanks again for being here.
Great to be back on.
It's always fun to have you come on and talk. So, can you talk about the genesis of how you came about to do this film?
Well, I've been wanting to for some time, but it had to all come together, as all the events have to, on their own. And what I mean by on their own, things just have to fall into place. I've been acquainted with Bob Gale since 1992. We never met. He reached out to me when my documentary on National Public Radio was being broadcast nationwide, worldwide, on composer Bernard Herrmann. And KUSC in Los Angeles was broadcasting it, and he was listening to it in his car as he was driving on the freeway. He thought it was just music they were playing. Then he heard the interview and he heard the discussion, and he realized it was a documentary. He got home, turned the stereo on in his living room and continued listening to it, and called KUSC radio afterwards and wanted to know where it came from. And he said the KIOS radio in Omaha, and he called them the next day, or his secretary called them and asked for my information. And I got this call on my answering machine in my home at the time, and I knew who he was, and he was famous as producing the Back to the Future films and other films as well for him and Spielberg and Bob Zemeckis. So I was quite startled to hear from him. So I did call him back, and he said he tracked me down. He said he wanted a copy of the programs. So that'll be easy. I'd be glad to. He said he didn't want to bother the KUSC. He wanted to talk to me directly. So I made 3 copies of the program for him on tape. And they were for him, Bob Zemeckis, and Steven Spielberg, because they all 3 wanted to have copies of the program. So it was a really audacious phone call.
Were they just really big Bernard Herrmann fans?
Yes, great fans of his film music,
history,
absolutely.
Yeah.
You know. And we became friends, and we corresponded over the years. And I always said to him, I hadn't even started my movie events yet at that time. But over the last 15 or 20 years, I said, someday I got to get you back here. But we got to wait for Back to the Future to become a bona fide classic. It's a modern classic, but now it's, next year it'll be like 34, 35 years old.
Right.
So it is old enough. And it's, of course, one of the most beloved movies of the last 40 years, without a doubt.
Well, it's been on the top lists of countless film, great film lists.
Well, all three films for that matter.
Yeah. What do you think puts it there? What's so special about Back to the Future?
Well, there's been other time travel movies that have been really good, and probably one of the greatest of all time. And I know Bob Gale and Bob Zemeckis would totally bow down to it, which they pay tribute to it, is The Time Machine with Rod Taylor and Alan Young and Yvette Mimieux from 1960, from H.G. Wells. And it takes place in 1899. It takes place at the time the novel was written. But they've always been fascinated with time travel, and people are fascinated by it. It's just an amazing, maybe not theoretical thing. There's possibilities, they claim, through physics and quantum mechanics and all that. And they wanted to take it a step further, modernize it into the 20th century, now 21st century, and make it a comedy.
Right.
And it became more fun. They could have fun with it. And I think what hit people's nerves, what struck people's nerves with it was so well done, and it's so entertaining, and it's very, very comical to see how people, the differences in cultural thought and what's known now and what wasn't known then, and how you can juxtapose the two and create comedic scenarios, which is what he did. And it's funny now because it adds an extra layer of interest and fun to it for us, because the future was 2015, which
Sure.
now is 3 years ago
Sure.
as we speak. So I guess there's something about that that really hit people's nerves, because it was both fun and adventurous and very, very funny. It's a great comedy.
I think it was Roger Ebert compared it a little bit to It's a Wonderful Life.
In very many ways, that's true. Yeah.
And it has that sort of Frank
What would
Capra.
your life be like, or what would it be like if you hadn't been around?
Yeah,
you know?
but it also the Frank Capra type kind of characters and warmth of storytelling. And,
Yes.
and that sort of.
But in a very comedic way, though.
Yeah.
There's nothing about the film that's heavily dramatic. It's
Right.
very light and fun.
Do you think time travel movies are difficult to?
Pull off.
Well, there's always going to be some holes, right, or ways to say, well, that couldn't be possible.
always gonna be
Or why
plot
are you?
holes.
Or why are you forgetting about that? You could have changed this if you went back
Right.
then. That would have
You
affected.
can't overthink these movies.
So you have to
too much.
suspend belief a little bit for a
You
time
have-
travel movie.
Well, just the fact that we haven't, as far as we know, haven't done time travel yet. You have to just from that right at the start.
What's the? I guess what's the premise of the film? What's the message or the moral of the story?
Well, I guess there could be several. You know, I wouldn't know which one to point out the most, in other than, you know, he's so grateful that his parents did meet, you know, and almost didn't because of his going back in time with the DeLorean. And like the Capra aspect, it shows a lot of sentimentality. It's great, a lot of sentiment. And that
Do you think
also, I
that's what
warms
why people love it so
That's-
much?
that's-
Because
yeah,
they kind of they want to be in his shoes in a way.
In a
Marty
sense,
McFly's
it's
shoes.
heartwarming in that regard. And you see how your parents were like when they were your age or younger, and it's kind of hard to put yourself in that position, but they were at one time, obviously. And it creates that sort of a fantasy scenario that many of us have thought about before, I think. And they put it on film in a way that could appeal to everybody, and it does.
I read some comments that if you watch all three films, it's really the story. The focus of the story is really on Dr. Brown,
Yes.
Christopher Lloyd's character.
Yes.
And then I also read that people have said they think Christopher Lloyd should get an Oscar for the greatest supporting performance in all of American films. Would
Well,
you agree with that?
And
or-
to do it 3 times
Yeah.
in 3 films, yeah, I could see that being the case, because he's sort of, in many ways, he carries the movie, because without him and the DeLorean, there is no movie.
Is he sort of like a Greek chorus in a way or something? Or
Yeah, you could say that. He's a supporting player, clearly, because the star is, of course, the Marty McFly character. Michael J. Fox is the main focus. But without him, you have no movie. There is no story. Without him and the time-traveling car, there is no film. There is no story. So, yeah, he does, I could see that being appropriately applied to him as being one of not the finest character performances in cinema history.
Sure.
To do it in 3 films in a row like that's quite unique.
he wasn't the first choice, was he?
I don't think so. No,
Yeah,
I
somebody I
think several of them were not the first choice.
I can't think of his name from Third Rock.
John Lithgow.
Yeah, John Lithgow was the one they talked to.
And that would have been a good choice.
initially too.
That would have been a good choice, but it turned out Christopher Lloyd was. You can't imagine anybody else but Christopher Lloyd. But Lithgow would have been good for that, 'cause like Third Rock from the Sun, you know, the character he played in that.
Yeah.
It was very similar,
Uh-huh.
you know.
And
to
the Michael J. Fox was not.
Well, no, they actually filmed a big chunk of the movie with, I'm blanking out on his name. You probably
Eric
heard-
Stoltz.
Eric Stoltz, yes, who after that went into, he was let go in filming this. The first, I would say probably the first quarter or third of the movie was
It
shot.
like 4 weeks or something. I think.
A big chunk of the movie.
Yeah.
And then he went and did Mask with Cher and Sam Elliott after that, which is a great film, too.
I read that Michael J. Fox, the only way they made this happen was they wouldn't let him go from Family Ties.
Yeah.
And he would shoot Family Ties during the day, and they would shoot this at night.
Yes.
From like 6 to 2 a.m.
A lot of it took place at night, particularly
Yeah.
out there in the shopping mall. That's all in the evening. So it really worked in their favor by just pure luck.
And he's sort of he's like the perfect Marty McFly. I mean,
It was advantageous that Eric Stoltz was replaced.
Yeah.
Although Eric Stoltz is a superb actor, But I can't imagine anybody else but Fox, because he plays it so well. He becomes the embodiment of the character. Absolutely.
So it's about teenagers believing their parents were never teenagers.
I was saying that earlier. Just you can't imagine that, and that's a fantasy thing. A lot of people have, or at least not so much a fantasy, maybe an imagined thought in their head. Well, were my parents ever like this? Were like I am now, and when you were a kid, but you don't think that's possible, or you just can't imagine it. And this film puts that theory into a dramatic sense, in the film.
I'd read that it's kind of that clocks are important, or time. The passage of time is kind of this.
Oh, it's time travel.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like used throughout the movie as a sort of a symbol, or there are a lot of clocks.
Well, the clock tower.
There's the clocks in Dr. Brown's laboratory or something. It's
exactly.
full of clocks and things.
And the clock tower and the story. But this is interesting. I just now thought of this myself, but this is the third time-related film I've done as a tribute. We did the original Time Machine in 2001 with the H.G. Wells film from 1960, the George Powell film. And then, 2 years ago, we did Somewhere in Time, which is a time travel film too, but a romantic one, of course, with Jane Seymour and Superman. I'm blanking out on his name right now. Christopher Reeve. And he's a time traveler going back to 1912. And so this is also a time travel. This will be my third time travel related film. And one was pure adventure, the second one was romantic, and this one's kind of a mixture of the two. There's a romance to it, obviously,
right.
Clearly, but more fun and more adventure and more comedy.
But I guess what drives it a little bit is that idea that time is running out, right? I mean, which is maybe a little different than some other time travel films.
I think they all have that to them. There's always that aspect of the story that it's about time travel, but yet they're under constraint. They're under time constraints.
Right. When I read a lot of that, I thought of the Wizard of Oz and the whole thing with the hourglass at the end, and how that built up so much suspense toward the end of that.
Right.
And I think the end of this, it amps up too, right? The last half hour is really kind of intense and fast and on the edge of your seats kind of suspense.
Well, that's what you have to have for a film to be, even a comedy, to be successful. You must have a certain amount of suspense, particularly at the end, to keep people in their seats, to keep them watching the film. You got to have something suspenseful. I mean, Hitchcock was the master of that. You must show something or have something to get people to stay in their seats to watch the end of the film. And like Ray Bradbury says, if you have a fair film or mediocre film and a good ending or a great ending, you've got a good or a great film. The ending is the most important part of a movie. And I think that's true.
Zemeckis had to prove something with this film. Can you comment on that?
I really don't know that aspect of that, really.
Well, he didn't want to depend on Spielberg.
Well, I suppose that's true with him, Bob Gale, too. Both of them wanted to show they could do it on their own. He executive produced it, but those two men carried the film.
Right.
I mean, Zemeckis directed it and Gale produced it.
It was originally going to be produced by Columbia, is that correct?
I believe that's true.
And then it went to Universal?
Universal. And that's for Amblin Entertainment with Spielberg. He's off, headquartered there. So that makes sense.
2007, the Library of Congress selected it for preservation in the National Film Registry.
Yes.
In 2008, American Film Institute's AFA's top 10 designated it both at the 10th best science fiction film. So it is science fiction and
fantasy
adventure.
And comedy. A lot of people look at it strictly as a comedy. I know people think it's one of the funniest films they've ever seen, and then there's others that love the fantasy aspect, and there's others again that like the time travel, science fiction aspect of it. So it's an omnibus. It has a little bit of everything, and it has some romance in it, clearly.
Well, you talk about sort of sentimentality or just sort of, I don't know.
Just sentiment.
The Capra-esque.
Capricorn.
Gale, can you talk about why Gale, how he came about with the script?
No, go ahead.
Well, he had went back home to St. Louis to visit his family.
Right.
And he went in the basement and was looking through his father's yearbook and found his father was class president.
Right.
And it started to cross his mind, what if he'd have been friends with his father when he was in
Would
high
they have
school?
been friends?
Yeah, would they have been friends?
Would they be friends at all?
Yeah.
Exactly. And that was sort of the catalyst for the whole idea. And also what would happen if your mother and father hadn't met. That's part of the Capra aspect of it, too.
Now, I guess they took it to Disney first, and Disney turned it down because they didn't like the story point where his mother
The incestuous kind of thing to it. Yeah.
flirts with him when he goes
Yes.
back, and they thought that was a little
Incestuous.
too much for
But
Disney.
it
to
obviously
do.
isn't, but
Well, it's very innocent.
very innocent, yes.
Because it's not like she knows that's her
It's
son.
her future son, 30 years in the future. But yeah, that Disney was a little too restrained, I'm
Yeah,
afraid.
Zemeckis felt if he produced another flop under Spielberg, he would never be able to make another film. Gail said, we were afraid that we would get the reputation that we were two guys who could only do a job because we were pals with Steven Spielberg. Now, Zemeckis did Romancing the Stone. He went on to do Forrest Gump, correct?
Yes.
And Castaway. So he went on after this
Did
to
some
make
great
some really
work of
great
his own,
pictures.
yes, absolutely.
correct?
Absolutely. And Bob Gale's gone into ancillary aspects of the film. He's created some games, computer games, pinball games, comic books. He's been involved in so many aspects of it since then.
He's involved with each of the sequels too, and the two
Yeah.
sequels.
He
Did he
produced
write
them.
both? He wrote those and produced them.
He produced and
Okay.
wrote all three of them, yes. And all the ancillary stuff that came out of it too.
There are some creative special effects in this film from
certainly.
Industrial Light and Magic.
Yes,
Were
absolutely.
those unusual for that time, or?
Well, they're cutting edge, and the DeLorean, of course, just as a set piece, a full-size set piece, it's you never forget it. There's nothing else that looks like that. It's become iconic, and in fact, we will have a DeLorean on display as you walk into the museum. The Jaws in that night. Hopefully, even if it's misty weather or a little bit rainy, we're still going to have it out there, but not with the doors open, obviously.
Sure.
But we'll have it there. You'll walk right by it as you walk into the building on display, and that will be a lot of fun. A local fellow named Aaron Gum, who's a fanatically huge fan on this film. He collects everything he can on it practically, and including a DeLorean. And he's going to have it on display for us. And he's really thrilled to have it there because he's a big fan of the film, and having Mr. Gale and Mr. Waters to pose with his cars, once in a lifetime
So
thing.
where will it be parked? Or?
Well, as you walk in, there's the steps on the east, and there's the glass doors as you come into the ground floor level.
So that's where it'll be.
It'll be
kinda where
parked
that-
parallel
that'll-
with that, right?
Okay, so there's a
Should
little
be right in
drive-up
there.
area right
There's
there.
a drive-up
okay.
area right in there, yeah. There's several places.
Because you
we
can
could
go
put it.
in those. I don't know how. Do they open the main doors?
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
night? Yeah. So if you go there, you would miss it though.
Well, it depends. They
probably.
may have it there, or we may have it down by that area too.
Okay.
There's more than one area we can keep it at, but people will look for it if they're looking. If they want to find it, they'll see it.
So it was 11 weeks at number one, fourth highest opening weekend of 1985, and was the top grossing film of the year.
I believe that.
It was started at number one, then National Lampoon's European Vacation overtook number one for 1 week, and then it came back again into the first place position for that time period. Now, Harry Waters Jr. played Marvin Berry, who was like a
Musician. He was the leader of the band that played the Enchantment Under the Sea for the prom.
But was he kind of supposed to be like a 50s? Like
Well,
a
he is.
Chuck
He's
Berry
Chuck
or-
Berry's cousin.
Okay, so was he supposed to kind of be Chuck Berry?
His cousin.
Okay.
There's a scene where he's on the telephone.
Oh, he is in the film. He's his cousin.
Yeah, in the film.
He's his cousin.
It's
Okay.
Marvin Berry's the character he plays. And,
Oh,
and
okay.
Chuck
Okay.
Berry, he calls up his cousin. Chuck, he goes, cousin Chuck, this is cousin Berry. He goes, you got to see this guy because Marty does the leg kicking that later becomes obviously known for Chuck Berry, And in the film, it makes it look like he came up with it, and Chuck borrowed it because his cousin Marvin saw it and told him. Very funny. And Harry Waters plays Marvin Berry, and he is the leader of the band. It's an all-black band, and of course it's 1955, so there's some issues going on there.
Sure.
And Marty gets up there and of course takes the guitar, and that's when he sings Earth Angel, Marvin Berry, which is played by Harry Waters. And the Earth Angel recording was so well received that he did in the film, because he's singing it for the slow dance so he can get his mom and dad together so that he can be born, because they don't get together until then and stay together. And he sings it so well that the record recording of that came out in 1985 when the film came out became a gold record for him. So he became successful. He plays this fascinating character. In fact, he's in the second film too. He's one of the few people that actually is also in part two, Back to the Future 2. And Mr. Waters is going to come, and he's going to talk about it, and he's also going to sing a cappella. He doesn't need recorded music, he said, or a live orchestra or a live band. he will sing Earth Angel for us on stage, which will be a real treat for the fans. Because that's a great scene in the movie.
Sure.
It's a pivotal scene in the film.
Let's. I think we have some clips. Let's roll the clips.
We have that very clip, I believe.
Play with his hand like that, and we can't play without him.
Yeah, well, look, Marvin, you gotta play. See, that's where they kiss for the first time on the dance floor, and if there's no music, they can't dance. If they can't dance, they can't kiss. If they can't kiss, they can't fall in love, and I'm history.
Hey, man, the dance is over, unless you know somebody else that can play the guitar. This is for all you lovers out there.
Earth angel, will you be mine? My darling dear, love you.
George, aren't you gonna kiss me?
I don't know. Scram, McFly, I'm cutting in.
Earth angel, the one I adore.
Hey, boy, you all right?
They can't play. Excuse me.
Okay, so there were a few clips. I think we saw the prom scene there, and
Yep, that's a great scene. And of course, that's where he comes up with the
is a
guitar
prom
kick.
Is a prom where the mother and father
That's where they get connected.
connected?
That's where Marty's trying to get him back,
Because
together.
he kind of ruined the real way they
Exactly.
got connected, right?
So he's got to make it right so that he won't be the man who was never born.
There's some, you said it's not as it's very lighthearted, but isn't there just a little bit of an underlying look at, Zemeckis tries to look at the 1950s in a more realistic way than how, in 85 we look back on 1950 as sort of an ideal period, because doesn't the mother has a drinking problem, and
Yes.
the father's he's kind of a failure or a bum in a way,
Kind of distant.
and those are kind of some pretty
Not Father Knows Best, that's for
antithesis.
sure.
Yeah, it's not Father Knows Best. So he is kind of taking a little bit more of a realistic look,
Right,
but in a fond way.
yes.
Um,
Not in an overly dramatized way.
Right.
Not heavy, but still there.
But now we look back on 85 as being in kind of I guess we look back at the 80s in a similar way
Yeah.
now as they look back on the 50s then.
What's interesting is to think of Back to the Future is looking at 1985. 1985 is looking at 1955 as 30 years ago.
Right.
And now we're looking at Back to the Future as 33 years ago. So it's
Right.
actually longer now. As strange as that may seem to us, but it really is.
But do we have the same fondness for the 1980s that we did for the
I think some people do, but
Because
it's not the
There's
innocence.
a little bit of a Ronald Reagan. In
There's
fact,
no
they mention
innocence.
him in this a little bit. Or
Well,
there's
'cause
a
he was-
story about him seeing the picture, and he got a big kick out of the fact that when he goes back, he tells them that Ronald Reagan is president now. And there's a joke about Jack Benny being the Secretary of the Treasury or something. And I don't know if a lot of people today will get that joke, because I imagine there's a lot of people today probably don't know who Jack Benny was.
Or maybe some teenage kids.
Yeah.
But it's interesting too, is it's kind of fun too when you see, when Marty sits down, I think he's sitting down at dinner and he mentions John F. Kennedy and they go, John who? They have no idea. Because it's in the future
Right.
from 1955, although it's a long ways back from even 85, but it's still in their future in 55 and the father doesn't know who he's talking about. So that's kind of how they threw those pieces in there, those little tidbits in there to give that sense of being out of time, because he's clearly out of time.
Right, right. So, what is what's the client? Well, I don't know if you want to give away too much of the picture, but can you point out some other things that are to look for in the picture?
I think most people watching this have probably seen the movie, but
Well, I imagine there might be some people
a
that
few,
haven't.
but, yeah, but probably not too many. But I'm sorry, what were you saying? What was your question?
Just things for people to look for. Like, I know there's some little jokes, like the farmer and his son are their names are, and I can't remember.
I can't either.
They're based on the cartoon in the 50s, the anime cartoon where they would always do time travel. The two characters, Sylvester or something.
Oh gosh.
Anyway,
I can't-
there's some jokes like that, and then
It's in jokes.
when they talk about the plutonium business.
Yeah.
The camera, I mean, it's just a news report on TV, but the camera's panning through the Dr. Brown's laboratory,
Right.
and the plutonium sitting there that they're talking about has been stolen from.
He's the one who stole it.
Yeah,
Well, he's a mad scientist.
yeah.
In the best way, with the wild hair and the erratic behavior. I mean, it's the cliche, but it works.
And they're Libyan terrorists that he stole the plutonium from.
That's a scary thought now.
Yeah.
But
So there's some interesting.
very much so. Yes. Little quirks there.
Well, let's review again here. This is going to be on Friday, November 9th
Yes.
at the Jocelyn Art Museum,
On the Witherspoon Hall.
Witherspoon Hall. Writer, producer, co-creator Bob Gale and actor Harry Waters Jr. And Harry Waters will sing Earth Angel.
Yeah, he was
a
Marvin
cappella,
Berry in the film.
and
Yeah.
he played Marvin Berry.
Yep.
They are going to speak before the screening and share some anecdotes and talk about the making of the film. And then they'll be available during the film and after
Most likely so,
to do
yes.
autographs. Does anybody have a book or anything they're bringing?
Harry's going to have some photos
Okay.
and 8x10s, but people will be bringing things, I have no
Okay.
doubt, to be signed.
You'll have the DeLorean parked out front.
Yep.
And this will be your 26th year of doing these events.
Yes, sir.
And
I think it's my 42nd or 43rd event. now.
42nd or 43rd.
I've lost count.
Okay, so tickets go on sale Thursday, October 4th, which is tomorrow.
As we're taping.
Yes, as we're taping.
As we're recording, anyway.
And they are $24 each, can be purchased at all Hy-Vee customer service counters in Omaha only. And proceeds are for the Nebraska Kidney Association. And for more information, call 402-932-7200. I have another odd number here, 3883.
Yeah, that's for out of state. We use that. The Kidney
So-
Association uses that too. That's the Nebraska Kidney Association. Why don't you go ahead and give that number too?
38
308.
308. Okay, I had 38. 308 830
I think it is.
830-2121.
That's right.
Okay.
And the reason why that is because that's for the out-of-state people. But they also, if you want to go to if you do a search for Nebraska Kidney Association online, just do Nebraska
You can
Kidney
do it.
Association. You can go online. You can buy tickets online. It'll take you to their
Okay.
website, and it'll say at
Okay.
the top, it'll say movie event tickets. You can actually buy them online
Now,
too.
can they buy them on your Omahafilmevent
Not on
site?
mine, no.
But you can find out more about
You can
the
go to my
event. Okay.
website. Will have all that information on there and the link to go buy them online too.
Okay. All right, Bruce, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, it's
again.
great to be on,
always
as
a
always.
pleasure.
A lot of fun.
And if you want to have a great evening and see a great film on the big screen, on a really big screen, then attend, please. So we'll see you next time on Coming Attractions. I'm Joseph Piper.
That's Calvin Klein. Oh my God, he's a dream.
Whoa, kid, stop.
Hey!
Boy. I'll get it back to you, all right?
Broken!
Whoa!